we're at the new parak, Lamed Amud Beis. Keep in mind that Shabbos is going to be a very short daf. So if we fall a little bit behind, it's not a problem because Shabbos is just about 6 lines. Now, if you look at Lamed Gimel and Aleph, most of the blot is Taisvis. Lamed Gimel Amud Beis is only Taisvis. What's interesting is that the Taisvis that's on Lamed Gimel is actually on today's daf. It was misplaced, or maybe designed that way. You take your pick. So it'll be okay. Okay, Beishamai Amram Hektish Toys Hektish. We've seen this Gemara before. Beishamai's famous opinion is that Hektish B'Toys have a Hektish. That means if you make a mistake when you're makdish something, when you sanctify something, then it's still sanctified.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, page position, please.
We're on Lamed Amud Beis, the new parak, Beishamai Amram. Last line of the page. So Beishamai Amram Hektish Toys Hektish. Beis Hillel Amram Ein Hektish. Beis Hillel's opinion is Ein Hektish, it's not Hektish, meaning that according to Beis Hillel's opinion, we'll see more examples of Hektish Toys. Either it is Hektish or it's not Hektish. We'll see examples in the Gemara. It's important to note that there will be 2 different ideas in Hektish Toys, have a Hektish or not. The idea we saw till now is Hektish Toys have a Hektish means that if you made a mistake, you didn't intend on making something Hektish, but you did it anyway, it doesn't make a difference. It's considered Hektish. So, for example, if somebody's a Nazir and he concludes his Naziris and he separates his Karbonis, and then he retroactively undoes his Naziris by going to a rabbi and having HaTorah done. He's released retroactively from his neder. So it turns out all the Karbonis that he sanctified are all he never intended to sanctify, right? It was made under a false premise. It's a mistake. In that case, Beishamai says, Hektish Toys have a Hektish. That's sort of the classical paradigm of Hektish Toys have a Hektish. Are we together? Does everyone recall? We learned this a few times in Adoram. You know, if a guy gives money to charity, he makes a pledge to charity. And first of all, thank you all for donating to Mayan. Appreciate it very much. And, a lot of you matched and everything, so really appreciate it. But speaking on the subject, the guy makes a donation by mistake. According to Beishamai, the donation is valid. There's no way to undo it. And he still says no. Traditionally, if there's a mistake, if something was made under a false premise, it's not valid, and neither is valid for Hektish. Hektish is no different. Okay. That's the first segment of the Mishnah. Now it gets more complicated. There's again. We'll have to understand that there's 2 ways. Hektish Toys have a Hektish. The way we've classically understood it is the way I've just explained it. And I think that everybody agrees that there is such a paradigm that's true in Beishamai, that if you made a mistake with regard to making something Hektish, it still remains Hektish. Okay, that's the end of the first part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah deals with a separate question, which may or may not be related. We'll for sure see the part today where they're not related, and perhaps we'll get to the part where they are related. Okay, so let's see the next example. Now, again, it's important to recognize Hektish Toys have a Hektish is a paradigm that's used in many different Masechtas in many different areas. Most traditionally, it's understood the way I just explained it. Now the Gemara goes to an example, which may or be, which according to the way we'll learn today, we'll briefly go one way, then we'll switch to a different way, is not, is or isn't the same way as we just explained it. Kate said, what's an example of this? Omar, he says, Shor Shachar, Sheyotza Mibeis Rishon. If you can mute their Zooms.
This new apocalypse.
Eric, can you show you to mute?
Sorry. I'm sorry, honey, I'm in the middle of class. Just a minute.
Perfect, that does it. Okay. So Kate said, Omer Shor Shachar Sheyotza Mibeis Rishon, Hareu Hektish. He has animals, sheep, bulls that are black and white. So he says, Shor Shachar, the black bull that shiyatzami beisarishin, that leaves my house first. Hareu hektish, it should be hektish. The yotza lovan, and a white bull left. B'shamei amram hektish, b'sil amram ene hektish. B'shamei says it's hektish, b'sil says it's not hektish. Okay, so here's the question. That doesn't mean the okay. So the question is as follows. This scenario, the black bull, there are two ways to understand the scenario, and we'll go through at least one today and another one tomorrow. Scenario number one is that he says the black bull that leaves my house first, and a white bull is the first animal to leave his house first. So therefore we say the white bull is hektish. Alternatively, he actually has 5 black bulls. And what he means, the first one to leave, he means the first black bull of the black bulls to leave. Except that's not exactly what he said. He said the first one to leave. The first one to leave wasn't black at all, it was white. So now the second black bull to leave, even though it's not really the first, that one is hektish. We'll explore this in more detail. Okay, dinner zohov, similar, two more similar scenarios. Dinner zohov sheyala biyadi rishon, a golden coin that leaves my pocket first, that I pull out of my pocket. Hareu hektish. V'ola shel kesef, and he pulled up a silver coin. B'shamei, I remember B'shamei says hektish, it's hektish. And we said hektish means either the silver coin is hektish, or it's the first golden coin. The first barrel of wine that comes into my hand, hareu hektish, it becomes hektish, but also shel. And instead of pulling out a barrel of wine, he pulled out a barrel of oil. Again, two versions here. Version number one is that the first barrel is the oil barrel, and that's the barrel that's hektish. Or version number two is that he has many barrels of wine. He says the first barrel of wine that I'm going to pull, he pulls a barrel of oil, and then he pulls a barrel of wine. And what's actually hektish is the first barrel of wine, even though it's the second barrel to be pulled. Okay, similar, B'shamei amram hektish, B'sil amram ene hektish. B'shamei says it is hektish, B'sil says it's not hektish. Says the Gemara, B'shamei amram hektish. B'shamei says it's hektish. My tamai de B'shamei. What's the understanding of B'shamei? Okay, so at this point in the Gemara, hektish tois have a hektish is understood the way we've traditionally understood it. That is to say that if you make a mistake with regard to hektish, let me just give me a second here. In other words, according to B'Shamai saying that if something is hektish, if you made a mistake when you made it hektish, then it's still hektish. What's the source for this? Okay, we have a concept which we mentioned before, Masechtas Nazir. We mentioned it a couple of times, Daf Yomi together. The idea of Tmura. Tmura is very simple. If you try to move the sanctification from one animal to another animal, so you have one animal that's an oilah, and you have a second animal that's a sheep. Right? Obviously, it's a male sheep and it's young. And you say, okay, this oilah's kedusha should be moved on to this oilah. The halacha is it doesn't work, and both animals are sanctified. Again, like you pointed out, there are a number of interesting features in kachim of things that you should never do. It's not clear why anyone would think that they actually should be done, but there are significant penalties for doing it. And Tamur is one of those things. So Tamur is sort of the soif hektish. It's the conclusion of hektish. Now, let's say a guy has a black animal and a white animal, and he says that I'm putting the kedusha of the oilah onto this black animal. Then he opens his eyes and it turns out it's white. The halacha is that the tamura is valid. I'm sorry, tamura is never valid, but in other words, both animals are sanctified. The original oilah is sanctified, plus the new animal, which he thought was black but actually is white. And what he gets lashes for violating a prohibition, or maybe he doesn't get lashes, but he incurs the penalty of Tamura. 1 second.
Please define word tour for me again.
Tamura means to switch. What in context, what it means is to move the sanctification from one animal onto another animal. Just give me a moment here. Let me just make sure I have this right. Hold on. Second. Okay, so Beishamai says that Beishamai says that if you make a mistake, we learn in the idea of Tamura that we learned that Tamura, even if he made a mistake, he intended on making Tamura on a black animal and did it on a white animal, he still violated the prohibition of Tamura. Moreover, Tamura happens even if he made a mistake. I'm not sure how exactly that would have happened, but if there's a mistake in the Tamura is valid as well. Similarly, if there's a mistake in the hektish, then the item is still sanctified. So he's comparing the Seif Tamura, the Seif hektish, the conclusion of hektish, meaning an attempt to remove hektish is just like we find when you attempt to remove hektish, the unsuccessful attempt works even by mistake. So too, when you try to make something hektish, that works even. Then the item becomes hektish even if there was a mistake in making it hektish. That's true specifically about Tamura. Hektish, trying to create hektish. Kedusha, sanctification doesn't happen by mistake. In other words, if it was a mistake, it's not sanctified. Okay. So Gemara asks, according to Beishamai, ma'ilu omar. Let's try to compare the scenario of our Mishnah to the scenario of Tamura. So again, what's the scenario in our Mishnah? So first scenario is hektish, not scenario. First concept in our Mishnah, it's debate about hektish toys. But then the Mishnah gives an example. A guy says the black sheep that leaves my house first should be sanctified, and then a white sheep leaves. At this point, the Gemara thinks the white sheep is sanctified. Says the Gemara, hold on a second. If a guy says, I'm making a Tamura, the Kedusha of this Ayla should be moved onto this animal. So what happens? let's say he says it should happen in the afternoon, after 12 p.m. So when did he violate the prohibition of Tamura? After 12 p.m. So same here. If the guy says the black sheep that leaves my house first, then and a white sheep leaves, that's not what he said. So why are we treating it as hektish tois? Okay, so what's again? So according to Beis Shammai, if a guy says I'm making Tamur in the afternoon, the Tamur is valid in the afternoon, and that's when he violated. Tamur is never valid. Sort of the violation of Tamur occurs in the afternoon. Over here, it's not like he said a mistake. He said a very clear statement. He said the first black animal that left. If there's no black animal that leaves, then there's nothing to make. It's not like he made a mistake here. There's just nothing. He never sanctified anything. So Gemara says, if a guy makes Tamura, he says this animal is in place of this animal. So this chulin animal is in place of this sanctified oila. This doesn't mean for half a day. It means at the half day point, at chatzais. Mi have a Tamura, is a Tamura. From that moment. In other words, when does a Tamur happen? Midday. Same here. When the black animal is the first animal to leave, then he made something hektish. Until that happens, he never sanctified anything. Why is it considered? Why do we consider this to be? Why do we consider this to be a hektish b'tois? There's no mistake here. Okay, so Rav Papa says. Now Rav Papa here reverses the understanding of hektish tois. So Rav Papa says in the scenario of our Mishnah, when he says the first black animal to leave, he has 5 black animals, and he means the first of the black animals to leave. But that's not exactly what he said. What he said exactly was that the first black animal to leave, there was no first black animal to leave, because the first animal that left was white. But what his intention was, the first of the black animals. 1 second. Okay, Amar Papa, Lakach Nemar Rishon. This is why he said it first. L'kishayotza, l'kishayetze Rishon. The first one to leave. So the Gemara asks, V'hashar shachar ka'amar. He said the first black bull. 1 second. Mila eskinan delesle elahai. In other words, the Mishnah seems to imply that it could be a scenario where he only has 1 black bull, which obviously means the focus of what he said was which animal to leave first. So he knows he wanted the first animal to leave and that it has to be black. So the Gemara says, no, it's not the scenario. The Islay train tilsa. He has 2 or 3 black animals. So he says the first black bull to leave, that's the one should be brought as a sacrifice. Beisil says, Im Kain Shiyotza Berushin Mibailei. Beisil says, no, he should have said the first of the black to leave. Okay. So the Gemara asks, Amalei Rava mi Barnish Ravashi, Rava from the town of Barnish asks Ravashi, Hi Hakish B'toisu, Hakish B'kavonahu. This is not a scenario of a mistake. This is very clearly, this is what he wanted to sanctify. So Gemara says, you're right. Second Hachanami, you're correct. Because he said something that was incongruous with the rest of his statement. Again, the focus, what he really wanted to do was sanctify the first of the black animals to leave. But what he actually said was the first animal to leave. And it has to be black. So because he sort of stumbled on the first half of his words, we call that a hektish tois, but the animal is still sanctified according to the opinion of Beis Shammai. asks the Gemara of Itzav B'Shamai Hektish B'Tois Lehava Hektish. Okay. One second. Okay. So the Gemara's question now is that it seems according to Rav Papa, the concept of hektish b'tois and b'shamai of our Mishnah is not really hektish b'tois. It's sort of hektish where you stumble on what you said, not that you made a mistake fundamentally in making something hektish. And the Gemara asks on this assertion, does b'sham, in other words, what are the parameters? Is this the understanding of hektish b'tois? But Tanan we learned. Mishan Adar ben Nazir, somebody who accepted to become a Nazir. The Nishal L'chacham V'Hitiru. And then he had his neder retroactively revoked by a rabbi. The Haisalai Behema Mufreshes. And he has an animal that was separated. The halacha is Teitzei V'Tira Be'eder. 1 second. So he separated karbonos. So Teitzei V'Tira Be'eder, the animals he has to let the animals pasture until they get a blemish, and then he sells them and he buys new sacrifices. So Amr base 1 second. Sorry. Teitzei V'Tira Be'eder means that the animals are considered chulin. They're considered non-sanctified animals. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So this again in the classical framework of hektish tois, this seems to support Beis Hillel's opinion. So the Mishnah brings Amr Beis Hillel Beishamai. Beis Hillel said to Beishamai, don't you agree? Isn't this a scenario where the guy brought sacrifices? He thought he was going to bring them, but then he had his neder retroactively revoked. So it's a mistake. And yet we see that they go back to becoming chulin. So evidently the opinion of Beishamai is that hektish b'tois is considered hektish. The Gemara says, El Beis Hillel Hudikato. The Gemara says Beis Hillel was one who made a mistake. Savri, they thought Tamai de Shame Mishum de Hektish B'tois have a hektish. 1 second. So you see here that Beishamai holds that hektish by mistake is considered hektish. Okay. So this means that Beishamai understood hektish b'tois in the classical framework, that if you make a mistake when you're sanctifying something, the hektish is still valid. And this is very different than Rav Papa's opinion, because according to Rav Papa, Beishamai is not really saying an idea of hektish b'tois in this Mishnah. He's saying an idea of sort of where you stumbled on what you said. So the Gemara says, you're right, El Beis Hillel Hudikato. It's the mistake of Beis Hillel. Savri Beis Hillel thought Tamai Mishum the Hektish B'tois have a Hektish. Amar Lohem Beishamai Lav Mishum Hektish B'tois Hu El Mishum Ta'atil Libur Kamal. So according to Rav Papa, Beishamai, this is not a question on Rav Papa. Why? Because Rav Papa would say that Beis Hillel misunderstood Beishamai. So in other words, Beis Shammai says actually not a hektish b'tois. Beis Shammai says if you stumble on what you said, it's still considered hektish. If you made a complete mistake, it could be it's not hektish. And Beis Hillel is the one that says Beis Hillel misunderstood that and thought the opinion of Beis Shammai is hektish b'tois loy have hektish. That hektish b'tois is not hektish. And therefore Beis Hillel proves to Beis Shammai that hektish b'tois is not hektish. But in truth, Beis Shammai could agree to Beis Hillel that hektish b'tois is not hektish. Beis Shammai is talking about a different type of hektish b'tois. Okay, Next Gemara, we're on the second to last line of Lamed Aleph and Aleph 31a. Sabri b'shamai hektish b'tois lehav a hektish. Does b'shamai hold hektish b'tois is not hektish? Tashma, let's examine this. They were traveling on the roads. Ve'echad b'kanegdan, and there is somebody walking toward them. Va'amar echad, again, so let's say there's Reuven and Shimon are walking down the roads, and they see in the distance a person. Let's say they think Reuven thinks he's Binyamin. Va'amar, and he says, Va'amar echad, and he says, Hareini Nazir shezeh plain. Reuven says, I should be a Nazir if that guy is Binyamin. And his friend Shimon says, I'll become a Nazir if it's not Binyamin. Okay. And then the guy himself, the guy who they think is Binyamin, or who one of them thinks is Binyamin, says, I'll become a Nazir if one of you are a Nazir, or if none of you are a Nazir. Or he says, if you're both Nazirim. Or if there's a larger group, and he says, Shekulchem Nazirim, that we're all Nazirim. So B'Shamai says, Kulam Nazirim, they're all Nazirim. In other words, according to B'Shamai, there's no such thing as accepting Nazirus with a condition. It's sort of like hektish b'tois. If you do it, if you make something sanctified and it turns out there's a mistake, it's still hektish. And similarly, if you accept Nazirus because of a premise, and even if the premise doesn't actually turn out to have been a reality, it's still considered valid. This is a very analogous situation to hektish b'tois. And the Mishnah says that everybody becomes a Nazir. The Gemara resolves, Amri no. Sabri Beishamai and hektish b'tois have a hektish. One second. Okay, I'm sorry. So the resolution according to our purpose is as follows. Beishamai does hold hektish b'tois have a hektish. But that's not indicated in our Mishnah. In other words, according to our Papa, it happens to be true that somewhere in Talmud, or in more than one place maybe, Beis Shammai is of the opinion hektish b'tois have a hektish. In the classical way it's understood. Again, if you make a mistake when you made something hektish, the mistake doesn't make a difference. It's too bad, it's hektish anyway. Similarly, if you made a Nazirus with a condition, and the condition was never validated, you're still a Nazir. However, that's not indicated by the Beis Shammai of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah Beis Shammai is talking about a different concept completely, where you stumbled over what you said. In other words, you thought you were saying that. You thought you were saying that. You thought you were saying that you what you wanted to say was the first black sheep, the first of the black sheep that come out. But what you actually said was the first sheep that is black, and there was no first sheep that was black. Okay. Okay. One second. Okay, about here is where I prepared until. So I think we'll stop here. Tomorrow, and I don't mind if we fall a little bit behind because we will catch up on Daf Yomi Nazir, and then hopefully maintain the regular pace until the end of the Masechta. I think we'll stop here. Sorry, I wasn't well